Welcome to Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation possible. You will get to hear from CSIA system integrators and industry partners to get a better understanding of how they help their clients solve process challenges and how they've earned success in their careers. Along the way, we will touch on system integration best practices, technology, trends, and challenges. Whether you are a manufacturer, end user, supplier, or system integrator, you will enjoy the insights these industry professionals bring to this podcast. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Lisa Richter, the host of Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation and processing possible. In today's episode, we're talking industrial automation with Ken Hackett, who is Director of Business Development for General Control Systems. In this role, he uses his 30 years of expertise in engineering design, sales, service, and installation of process controls, instrumentation, and electrical systems to partner with clients in the life sciences, industrial, and food beverage sectors. In addition, for the past 3 years, he has served as president of the ISA Eastern Chapter. Finally, full disclosure, Ken will be a speaker at the upcoming CSIA Marketing Workshop held in conjunction with the 2024 CSIA Conference in Dallas this April. Ken, welcome to the podcast.
Lisa, thanks for having me.
So let's start out with the beginning. How did you choose a career in system integration of all things?
Well, I think the career chose me, to be honest with you. I was in distribution for 25 years, had a client, Superior Controls. One of the owners I would meet every Friday night, and he kept asking me, who can I get to run my business in Albany, New York? And I would give him names after names after names. And finally, one day he's like, look, I'm not asking for names. I'm asking for you. So I had him.
You were not picking up on the hint, huh?
I wasn't picking up on it at all. And it's funny how things kind of happen. But long story short, he made an offer to me that I kind of couldn't refuse. And I ended up joining his team and heading up his company out in Albany, New York with 4 engineers. And, when I left them 3 years ago, they had 40 there. So it was a lot of learning and growing along the way, which made it very exciting. But yeah, that's why I say I think it chose me more than I chose it. And I'm glad I did.
So if you have to describe to lay people, your everyday people at a cocktail party or maybe at some social event outside of the industry, how do you describe to people what it is that you do?
It's funny you ask that question because, my kids for 30 years have been asking me the same thing. Dad, what do you do? They go, I know you talk to engineers, but what do you do? And I say this wholeheartedly, right? And if you know what a systems integrator is, we take it from the design phase to the startup phase and everything in between. And what do I mean by that is, you can come to us with a napkin note or a drawing or even an idea from a manufacturing concept and ask us, this is what you want that piece of equipment to do or not to do, or speed up or not speed up, or whatever the case may be. And we have enough talent on our team where we can really dig into what you're asking us to do and put a concept to that to where you get it at the end of the day. Now, if you don't know what we're talking about, then you're going, okay, that's mumbo jumbo to me. The easiest way for me to take it is if you're making a drug or baby food or anything to that magnitude, there's processes to that, right? And it starts out with taking raw material and mixing it together. Well, we write the code to be able to do that. We help take that recipe and put it into a program that allows it to mix all these chemicals together to make an outcome, a drug or a product at the end of the day.
Let's talk a little bit more about General Control Systems. The acronym is GCS, so that's probably what I will use going forward. But tell me a little bit about the history there. How did it begin? How did it evolve?
I can give you as much history as I know. I joined the company 3 years ago. Randy Powell came to me and I was able to buy in as one of the owners. But it was opened up 27 years ago by Clay Robinson. And Clay, he worked, I believe, for GE for a little while and decided that, he wanted to go out on his own and have more of a work-life balance where it wasn't, all day, every day, 12, 15 hours of grind. He wanted to be able to kind of enjoy his family. So he opened up General Control Systems. And he felt using General Control Systems as a name gave an overview of no matter what control systems he's working on, he could be the expertise in that field. And I believe he started out with a handful of people another partner, and then 2 panel shop employees, and he went out and marketed it. And then they grew to about 25 people to 30 people. And then in 2017, Randy Powell took over and bought the company out from underneath Clay because Clay wanted to retire. And Randy's vision was to, not be the best kept secret in the Northeast. He wanted people to know who his company was. And it's funny because, like Mark LaRoche did with Superior Controls, Randy found an opportunity to come visit me at Automation Fair while I was working for Superior and waited his time out. And he basically said, Ken, I want a couple hours of your time if I can. And I'm like, Randy, you're going to have to wait till the end of the night. And it might be 10 o'clock. He's like, I don't care. I'll wait till 10. And, we ended up meeting up. And at that point, I felt that, his vision fit my vision. And again, I go back to, I think, the integration brought me into this business versus me choosing it. So it's been a great ride. Randy's vision has been grow, grow, grow. 2 years ago, we opened up an office in Florida. We just opened up an office in Boston 6 months ago. We got an office down in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we're getting ready to open up one in Texas. So we're really growing. And as I explained to our employees, the wheels on the bus are moving down that highway 100 miles an hour, and everybody's got a seat. We just got to make sure we do our job and we keep putting the right people in the right seats so that we continue to grow.
So I have to ask then, this vision of work-life balance, if you're owning your own company, that seems a little contradictory to me. Like you would have to be sleeping and breathing and that whole thing.
I'll go back to the analogy again I use with my kids, right? When you have passion for what you do, it's not work. So every day I get up, I have a lot of passion for what I do, and I have more passion for my employees than I do for the job itself, right? And making sure each and one of those employees has that balance is great. You got to have passion, right? I go back to that word passion because it truly is. You got one life and you got to make sure you're enjoying it. And think about how many hours you do spend at work. And if you don't enjoy it, that's going to make the rest of your life miserable as well. So, especially me being at this career fair today, one of the things I tell the kids here is make sure you choose the career that you truly enjoy and what makes you happy every day. Don't choose the money. The money will definitely follow the passion.
I was listening to a podcast and one young woman just said, you have one wild and precious life. That phrase is stuck in my head now for like a week. So I totally understand where you're coming from with that. So let's talk a little bit more about GCS. Do you specialize in an industry or a product or a discipline? And if so, why or why not?
So for the first 20 years, I think of GCS, they basically played in that water, wastewater market, right? And kind of that was their niche. And then when Randy took over, he got more into the semiconductor side of it because that's where his background came from. That's where they kind of played in light industry, any, food and beverage manufacturer, they kind of played in that as well. But when they brought me in, it was more of kind of the spearhead, being able to sell in all disciplines and all arenas, but more importantly, going after that pharmaceutical and biotech market, because that's where my background comes from. You think about process, and process goes into every manufacturing facility, regardless of whether it be a pharmaceutical, whether it be a food and bev, or even a water, wastewater treatment facility. But on the other side of it, there's a lot of similarities. Every process plant, every manufacturing pharmaceutical plant, they got to have clean water, right? So they're either working with the local municipality or they're creating their own municipality or their own treatment plant within their own facility. So the process in the industry is all the same, and they kind of overlap. The clean room environment space in pharmaceuticals is the same as in semiconductor. So you can see where there's a lot of similarities along the line. So, like I explained to Randy, there's no reason why we shouldn't be playing in all of them, and just making sure when we're bringing people on from an engineering standpoint that they have that expertise in each one of those platforms so that we are the domain expert to that client when they're calling us up.
Talk to me a little bit more about that. Are there certain suppliers that you work with?
Well, we're a solutions partner with Rockwell, we're a solutions partner with Siemens, and we're a solutions partner with Snyder, and we're a solutions partner with GE. So we play with them all. At the end of the day, we have to be able to spin on a dime based upon what the customer's needs is and what the customer has in their facility. It doesn't make sense if a company has all Rockwell in their plan, we're trying to force Siemens down their throat because that's all we have on the staff from an engineering standpoint to be able to handle their needs. That paints us into a corner. And we, as an engineer and as a systems integrator, we don't want to be painted into a corner. We want to be able to do anything and everything for everybody that we can, and making sure that we're a solutions partner with them as well.
The challenges that your customers are facing right now?
My personal feeling is staffing. I think, no matter if it's a restaurant or it's a manufacturing facility or if it's a maintenance crew or whatever the case may be right now, is staffing, is being able to find those individuals that want to work, that want to put the effort in and have that passion for what they do. COVID taught us a lot of things, right? And I don't want to get into that disease itself, but COVID taught us that work-life balance is necessary. And, working the 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week, and missing all your kids' games and missing, the structure of your family, because that's what you were taught was work, right? And work came first. People are thinking differently because, again, going back to, you got one life, you got to enjoy it and you got to do what makes you happy. So I think staffing is the big thing. And then obsolescence of pieces of equipment. Again, I go back to COVID, right? We were relying on third world countries to make our components, and a lot of the chips and everything that were in those components, we couldn't get materials for. So we had to be able to spin on a dime. And that, going back to when you ask us what manufacturers we play with, it's nice that these manufacturers have open-end networks where they all talk to each other. 15 years ago, the equipment didn't talk. So if you had a Rockwell PLC, you had to have a Rockwell drive, you had to use Rockwell software. That's not the case anymore. You can use any type of drive in any PLC. So, manufacturers gotten a lot smarter, but again, with COVID and the delay of products, it allowed us to be able to mix match manufacturers and still be able to build a system and get the customer up and running in the time frame that they can manufacture here in the U.S.
Are you planning on joining your colleagues for the 2024 CSIA Conference, April 15th through the 19th? I hope so, because this year's event has some new features I think you're really going to enjoy. For starters, CSIA is inviting the next generation of leaders to attend this conference that explores not just the present state of the industry, but the future as well. In fact, there is a whole track devoted to emerging leaders, plus dedicated networking time. Don't worry, you'll still find plenty for the current leaders, like the second annual Business as an Investment Workshop, as well as the classic Best Practices Workshop. On a personal note, though, I'm most excited about the brand new workshop called A Strategy for Success: How to Build the Ultimate SI Marketing Playbook. It's a topic I'm personally super passionate about, but also, to be honest, I helped plan it. And we designed my dream workshop. Ultra practical, extremely hands-on, highly entertaining. Finally, the keynote speaker lineup is pretty special this year. From a literal rock star to a business makeover expert to an EOS implementer. Where else are you going to get that? You can explore it all at www.controlsys.org/conference2024. And remember, the sooner you sign up, the more you save. So smash that register button. See you in Dallas. On the social platforms, I see a lot of people complain all the time about the self-checkout that they're finding everywhere. If you go to McDonald's, you have to, order yourself on the kiosk. If you go to any grocery store, you have to check yourself out. And people are complaining about it all the time. I'm like, they can't find people to take those jobs. What do they're going to automate them because nobody wants to do that, or they can't find them or what have you. So I think there's a public misperception about automation is like the boogeyman or something.
Yeah, everybody thinks automation is taking somebody's job, right? They're not realizing that it's making us more efficient. Mm-hmm. And again, you just said it best. Nobody wants those low-paying jobs anymore, right? And you think about being a systems integrator and being an engineering structured company. Engineering is a niche market, right? And you think the more stuff you automate, you need more engineers, right? And that's the issue right now, is that if you're a good engineer, you're working and you're loving life because you're making a ton of money and you're getting paid top dollar. But at some point, the bottom is going to fall out there. And that's what we're seeing right now, is that we can't get those qualified bodies. And that's why coming into these career fairs and getting these kids early on, getting them in their sophomore year, coming in and teaching them how to program and learn our language through their internships, right? And then by their senior year, they're ready to rock and roll for us. So if we take 10 interns in this semester and 5 of them last, and we get them when they graduate and we get 5 out of that 10, we hit a home run because we got 5 talented students coming out of the gate, being able to program and get on that bus right away and sit in that seat and help execute projects right out of the gate. And that's where I see we're going to change where we are today from that cycle, right, of getting those qualified people and getting the trades back, getting the schools to start offering more of those trade skills will get us back to building the country back to where we need to be. But again, it goes back to we got to have qualified and quantified people to be able to do the work, no matter what it is.
Yeah. So we should say, for context, that people who are listening to this may not realize you are currently calling in from a career fair. So that's why you're referencing the career fair in your comments, but also why your audio may be a little bit
echoing.
Different. Yeah.
Yes. I apologize about that.
No worries. No worries at all. You got to keep the lights on. So let's talk more about your projects and what's unique about how you approach a project.
Again, I think it goes back to the communication portion of it, right? And right out of the gate, communicating with the client and understanding what their expectations are right out of the gate. And that way, we're not setting our engineers or our project managers or even our shop people up to fail, right? If we got a clear-cut message of what's being asked of us, there should be no excuses, right? But there are hiccups that come along the way, supply chain issues. But if you're communicating those up front and you're straight out with the client, those issues are not issues anymore. And again, I go back to the communication piece, and that's huge no matter what we do. And I think that's what's unique about us and how we do things is we sometimes over-communicate, but I've been told I'd rather over-communicate and listen versus, just assuming and then being wrong when you get to the end. So back to your question, what's unique about us? I think we stop and listen and then listen again, and then communicate. I know it sounds simple, but it's that simple. It really is.
So how much of your business would you say is repeat? If that's
I love this question. No matter what business I'm in, it's always that. And my answer to this is, and it's always true, right? Is, it's always around that 80 to 90% is repeat business. And I say that no matter what industry I was in, but I got to go back to, explaining to you and to the listeners that we're growing fast, right? And so when you're growing fast, we got a little different concepts than most systems integrators. We got the spoken wheel approach. So, I put a business development manager in an area, and then underneath that business development manager, there's salespeople. And those salespeople aren't waiting for the phone to ring. Most systems integrators are waiting for the phone to ring, or because they're getting 80% or 90% of their revenue from repeat business because they're doing so well. But we're taking a different approach. I'm going out there, knocking on the doors, and we're finding that pain. And when we find that pain, we're staying on it. And we're bringing a solution to the client. When we bring that solution, we take away that pain, we got a customer for life, right? As long as we communicate and do what we say we're going to do. So that's why I had to answer this a little differently, because I think we're growing on a pace that we're getting new customers every day because of the social media and showing the customers who we are and what we're doing. And wholeheartedly, when you're working with a company and their people move to different customers and they like what you did for them at that current job that they were at, they're going to bring you along to the other plant that they go to or the other job that they go to. So again, that would be a new client, right? Just because the individual moved to somebody else, but that's a new client in my mind. So again, going back to answering your question, in the normal world, in a normal time frame, it'd be 80 to 90. But I think right now, 30% of our business is coming from new revenue because we're opening up new locations and knocking on those doors.
So tell me about a project that was super challenging and what you did to take away that pain, like you said.
I just had one that just came up, and it was one of those that when I quoted it, it was like a mom and pop shop, right? So I got the call because, again, my reputation, and the owner called me up and he's like, I got your name from X, Y, and Z. And he's like, I'm calling you because I hear you can bail me out. And, we got into the story. So what he was doing, and I don't want to give up the names of the platforms. I'm just going to say it was one platform versus another, right? So he quoted it using one platform. And when he got the order, the customer said, I'm going to pay you X dollars more, but I want this platform. And he never worked with that platform. So, he went to his local supplier and he got the conversion. And they basically said it's going to be an easy cutover.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't easy. So he got into it and, a few $1,000s into it, more than he wanted to put into it. He gave me a call and he says, can you bail me out? So I quoted it as a time and material going on based upon what he's telling me. And again, this is where the communication comes in and listening, right? Is that I explained to him, I said, look, I'm quoting this based upon what you gave me, but once my engineer gets into this, if he gets to a point and has to stop, I'm going to be picking up the phone and calling you. We're not going to just take it to the finish line and then give you a project that doesn't work. And guess what happens? Halfway through it wasn't going to work. So my engineer calls me up and says, what do you want me to do, Ken? Do you want me to keep going forward? I said, no, you stop. I'll call the client. So I called the client up and explained to him what's going on. And, I could tell the pain in his breath, but this is where I listened a little bit. And I said to him, this is where you got to understand your audience and understand what's going on as well. I explained to him, I'll work with you no matter what. I'm not going to bill you for things that we don't do. But if I get down the road and it's another hiccup, there's got to be a change order. And he's like, whatever, I got to get this done. We got to get moving forward. I got to drop dead date of getting it here. Long story short, we should have rewrote the whole program from scratch. It would have saved them money at the beginning. But we ended up getting them up and running. We ended up saving face for him with a new product because at the beginning, he didn't want any part of it because it did cut over the way he was sold on it. So we were able to save grace in that. But more importantly, now going forward, his customer got a solution that they wanted. Now he's comfortable for every press going forward. He's going to get, the solution to be able to provide. And we're going to get to do the controls work because we took it step by step with him. The hiccups were in there was that the distributor wasn't clearly communicating what could be done. He just sold them a bill of goods and said, okay, it's going to work no matter what, and didn't get into all the details. And that's where I say you have to listen 3-4 times and get those details before you start executing these projects. But it turned out to be a great project. He was happy at the end. We were able to save him some money without billing them right out of the gate. So now I get repeat business over and over again out of that client because of that. Going back to your previous question, how much of your business is repeat? But that's how it does, right? Is if you service them and take care of them and making sure that they get what they want at the end of the goal line without charging them more and more and more, you're going to win every time. Yeah. But there are going to be those times, Lisa, as you know, that you're going to get to the goal line and then they're going to move that goal line on you and they're going to switch it. And then they expect you not to want a change order, right? And you got to stand up for your company at that point and say, that wasn't part of the scope.
So what would you say is the smartest decision your company has made recently?
Training. We made an effort at the beginning of the year. Actually, it was prior to the beginning of the year. We got together and it's mandatory now that 10% of your week is put towards training. So if we don't see it now, again, we understand if you're on a project and it's got a deadline, but if you don't make that 10% up this week, it's 20% next week, right? But we're gauging that. We put a person in place to measure that and making sure that they're getting done and making sure it's qualified training, right? It's training that's well used for them to grow in their seats and be able to grow as an engineer. And you know what? We're seeing it take off tenfold, and it's going to pay us tenfold in return as an organization because the company is going to grow and we're going to have engineers that can work in all platforms. When they show up to the customer site and they got confidence that they can handle anything that's thrown at them, we win all over the place every time. So that's exciting to me, as you can tell. I believe that training is the key. It's a big key. It's not always about the dollars, right? It's not always about, how much more are you going to pay me in an hour? It's about that balance of work life, but also being able to grow as an individual within your company from an educational standpoint as well.
So the 10% mandatory training a week, is that well received by the guys or the people?
Depending on your age, right?
Yeah. and I say that because we're of that age.
Well, that's what, change is challenging, right?
Yeah.
And some people like to say, well, I've been doing this for 40 years and I don't need to learn any anymore. Well, if you're in this industry, especially the automation industry, it changes every day. And so you have to have that mindset to, as long as you're learning, you're growing, right? And it's when you stop learning, you should retire. That's the way I look at it. I say, 80% is well perceived. And then there's always that 20%. You got to show them the proof, right? So they can believe. And I'm okay with that, right? I like the challenge because that's what makes the job fun, right? Is getting the non-believers to believe and then showing them how we're going to grow, right? And that's the fun part about it.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. How has GCS grown or changed in the past year? And what do you expect for the company in the next year, 2 years, short-term horizon?
I go back to, opening up new offices. That's exciting. So that's what's new for us and growing. The headquarters is in Albany, New York. And again, back before Randy bought them, Randy's vision in 2017 was to have multi-locations, but then COVID hit. He had to put the brakes on everything. They moved the new headquarters over from Green Island, New York into Albany, New York, in a much bigger facility. His vision was to grow as it was. So right now we got about 42 offices upstairs that are vacant. And that's the vision, is to fill those offices, Albany be the headquarters. But again, opening up Florida, opening up Boston, opening up Raleigh, North Carolina, and soon to open up Texas. That's been the vision for the last year, is making sure that we're bringing these offices up into the same platform, growing underneath our umbrella, understanding how we do business, and making sure that, we're all on the same page, and making sure our executive team is part of those growth plates, meaning that they're at those facilities, they're training, making sure they're walking the teams through what we do from a culture standpoint. Culture is huge with us. We want people to come to work every day, not for a job, but for a career. And when you look at it that way, it makes everybody in the company raise their game, because they're there for a career. They're not there to punch a time clock. So that's the vision we're going. And again, like I said, we're opening up Texas. So that's going to be a huge growth play for us, because not only in the water, wastewater market down there, the semiconductors moving in there, they got some big fabs going in, and that's right in our sweet spot. Raleigh, North Carolina, the pharmaceuticals are moving in there left and right. So that's a big sweet spot for us as well. Boston, inside that 495 corridor, is all biotech. Mm-hmm. So, if we want to play in that market, we got to be in that market. And those are the things that make it fun. And hiring and building those teams up is what's the challenge for us going forward, is getting those people, going back to the staffing, right? That our customers are having those challenges, but we're having those same challenges as well, is making sure, we're getting the rock stars of the world that are joining our team and staying on our team. That's the key.
We all know the stranglehold the talent shortage has on business, which means this is no time to trifle when it comes to staying competitive in the Thunderdome that is the labor market. That's where the CSIA Talent Retention Toolbox comes in. TRT provides salary information for a comprehensive list by 34 SI industry job titles. It also provides insight into additional benefits like retirement programs, medical benefits, PTO, bonuses, and more to provide you with a holistic compensation picture. You'll also get high-level HR analytics like industry turnover rates and recruiting sources. Here's how it works. The survey will open January 16th. You will have until February 28th to enter your data. The final report will be available soon after, mid-March, but only to CSIA members who input their data. And while TRT provides valuable insight into how your talent cost structure compares to others, CSIA's Pulse program carries this benefit even further by providing a quarterly look at how efficiently you are deploying your team. Benchmark your operations against your peers to focus your efforts on the areas that will deliver the most value. To learn more, visit www.controlsys.org/TRT and www.controlsys.org/CSIA-PULSE. But don't trifle. You're competing with some more quote unquote glamorous places to work. So that's another challenge, I'm sure, for you.
Well, again, you think about the education piece, right? When you come from a systems integrator, you're so well-rounded and you can play with any platform. So, but that's why we got to keep it exciting for them. It's the first 5 years. After I get them for 5 years, they're going to be there forever, right? But it's that first 5 years and keeping them not entertained, but more keeping it flashy for them, where they're having fun doing their job. Because there are the Teslas out there. There's the Regenerons, there's the Pfizers, there's the Mercs that are great companies to work for. They have great cultures and that pay great money, but you're stuck in one platform, right? So if you're an engineer and you want to play with multi things, and that's where I can keep it flashy for them. But, some people don't like the flash anymore. They just want to be, punch that clock from 8 to 5. And I'm okay with that too, right? Because, once they leave me and if they leave me on great terms, which 99% of the time they do, and they go to another manufacturer, that means I got an in to be able to sell to that manufacturer as well, right? So it's a win-win all the way around, the way I look at it.
So if you're a customer and you're trying to find a new system integrator to work with, what would be your advice to that customer trying to choose a system integrator?
Well, there's two scenarios, Lisa, on that question, right? The first one for me would be, are they CSIA certified? Would be one of my recommendations, because if they are, then that their procedures, their policies, and everything else, the way they do things is done in a way that is structured right. And it's going to be repeatable and sustainable every time. That's huge. And then depending on what platform I'm working with within my manufacturing facility will dictate, what systems integrator is a solutions partner. So, if it's Rockwell, are they a Rockwell Solutions partner? And are they badged in my area? So if it's water, wastewater that I'm looking at, is that integrator badged in that area? If they're badged in that area, then I know that they're the expertise, right? And each manufacturing platform has a solutions partner, and then you're badged depending on which structure of the vertical you fall in: pharmaceutical, water, wastewater, semiconductor. And that way, you know that you're getting the domain expert in that platform. But, I also know you can have all those credentials and you get in there and you have the conversation with the integrator and you don't get the warm fuzzy. I'm always about the gut, right? Your gut's going to tell you the right things, and and credibility, right? Every integrator is going to have a checklist of who they worked with and what projects they're proud of, and do your homework. It's easy to call up the customer and say, hey, did you like General Patrol's work? Did they do the right job? Were they on time? You got to do the work yourself. The problem with the internet, Lisa, is that it makes us lazy as well, right? Mm-hmm. We do a couple clicks, we jump on a web page, and if it's flashy, we're good. But we don't do the grind of doing our homework and understanding and pre-qualifying who we're going to give $500,000 to. Customers are getting better. The bigger ones make integrators go to a portal, and therefore you got to fill out, basically, giving them your DNA so that they know exactly who you are, and what you do. And I'm okay with that, because that weeds out the mom and pop shops and really puts the qualified people in the right place to do the job. And don't get me wrong, the mom and pop shops, there's places for them as well, right? There's enough work for everybody out there. But your question to me is, how do you choose a qualified system integrator? And that's my recommendation.
What sort of trends and challenges are you seeing in industrial automation right now?
This is a challenging question, right? Depending on what vertical you're in. If you're in pharmaceutical, your challenges is right now is being able to get a drug to the market and as fast as you can with the qualified and quantified people to be able to validate those lines and making sure the FDA approves them. That's a challenge every day that's never going to go away. And more so now than ever because of the shortage that we have with people, right? With all the people retiring, especially those senior engineers that, had 30 years experience and that tribal knowledge of this facility. And now you're bringing a kid out of college and you're putting them in that seat and saying, steer my ship. And they're like, okay, how? So I feel that it's just time in the seat. It's not the educational piece, right? It's just being able to understand that. So that's one of the challenges. And then technology, right? The adolescences of some of these, manufacturing lines that are 30, 40 years old. And after COVID, they said, we're not going to put our money in that technology anymore. We're going to move it forward because now we can't get those chips anymore anyway. So we might as well go to the new platform. That puts the challenges on the manufacturing because they don't have the money to upgrade those pieces of equipment. If you're a paper machine, your margins are so slim on paper right now that it's difficult to upgrade, to a $100 million piece of equipment or a $20 million piece of equipment when your ROI is going to be 5 to 10 years. That's hard to swallow, right? So you're putting Band-Aid effects on these pieces of equipment, and that puts stress on your team, and then your team leaves. So that's where I find is the adolescence of some of these manufacturing pieces of equipment that are now no longer made. It makes it difficult for these manufacturers to spin on a dime because they still got to manufacture these components, right? Especially if they're a subcomponent of something else. That's where these shortages are starting to come into play a little bit.
What makes you optimistic about the future of the automation industry?
Technology. It's growing, it's getting faster, and it's getting smarter, right? With AI coming out, there's so many things that we can do now that we never even thought of before. And I look at it just in the medical device side of things, with technology and how we can give people limbs today where they can get some of their life back. I'm not going to say you're going to get all your life back, right? But it gives you that ability to dream again. And that's a great thing. And that makes us as a country, as the automation side of things, so exciting for the future on where we're going. But it also makes it very scary because we don't know what we don't know, right? Yeah. And technology does scare us because it moves so fast, so quickly. And then it gets in the wrong hands, things can be dangerous. But, I think we're also learning along the way, cybersecurity is a great example on how quickly technology can grow. But if we don't put the right things in place to protect it, it can be devastating in a lot of ways as well, right? Yeah. So we got to continue to learn, continue to educate ourselves, stop being lazy, and continue to grow, right?
Switching topics a little bit, let's talk about CSIA. and GCS's membership. What would you say the biggest benefit is to being a member of CSIA?
Well, I go back to, my earlier comments that when you're trying to search for an integrator and you have those qualifications from CSIA, especially if you're certified, being a member is one thing, but being certified and going through the audits, that's a gut check. And then when you put your company through that and you pass it, it's very exciting and very rewarding. But it also aligns with our ISO, right? With the two of them aligning with each other, it really keeps us in check, right? And it makes sure that we're doing the right things every time, all the time. And again, I go back to the policies and procedures. It's really a good guideline to running your business and doing it the right way. The benefits of CSIA is the conferences. This would be my third one. And the first one that I went to, it was holy sugar. I'll never miss one of these again. And it's the hot topics. If I was to take one thing away from that conference, it's sitting in those and listening to some of those stories, because every integrator can relate to a scope change, a customer is not paying. I mean, there's so many examples of why something goes south, but how do you take that negative and turn it into a positive and either keep that customer or keep the project going? Those are exciting things to me. And watching companies grow from 20 to 100 to 200 and listening to their success stories and to their horror stories on how they got there. Because we all feel it, right? But we all can relate and we all can grow. And I think that's one of the exciting things about CSIA and being a member. But also the hot topics, the educational piece. There's so many things that CSIA has to offer that paying for a membership and not taking advantage of it, shame on you as an integrator, right? And that's the way I look at it.
Speaking of that, we are having a marketing workshop in conjunction with the CSIA Conference, and you are going to be a speaker. So talk to me a little bit about what you're hoping to share with the audience at the marketing conference.
With me, it's all about, and I go back to passion, right? And that's what I'm hoping to get out of this. And I'm hoping what I can deliver to people is I truly have passion for what I do. I really have passion for this industry. And when you have that passion, that desire, you're going to educate yourself along the way. You're going to educate who's around you, and you're going to pick up the low tide and raise it, right? And that's what I'm hoping that they get out of this, is that the information that we're going to provide, the value that we're going to provide, the energy we're going to provide, and the fun that you can have doing it while you're doing it. That's what I'm hoping to get out of it, Lisa. I'm excited to be part of it. I was excited last year. It was fun hearing the questions come up. What was exciting about it is you can script what you're going to talk about while you're giving it out, but you can't script what's going to come out of the questions. And that's what I love, because if you don't have passion about what you're doing, it's going to come across when you're answering those questions. But when you have passion about it, you bring the whole room up, and you take the people that are scared to ask a question, and now their hand's going to go flying up in the air because, you're interacting, you're giving that positive feedback, you're bringing the energy. And again, no matter what we do in life, you got to smile, you got to have the energy, and you got to have the passion.
So I know you're super passionate about your job and you love your job, but if you couldn't, for some reason, do this current job, or maybe it's a parallel universe or clone Ken, and we haven't made any Barbie jokes. I want you to know I've been very good about not making any Barbie jokes this whole time I wanted to. But if you could do any other job, what would it be?
I would be a nanny to my grandchildren.
Like a Mrs. Doubtfire situation or
something like that. Yeah. I mean, that's my passion right now. Aside from work, my children were my passion when they were growing up, and now it's those grandbabies. I want to be around them as much as I can.
Yeah.
We FaceTime every night. It's a different love, right? They say, your children's love is one thing, but your grandchildren is another. But yeah, that's what I would do. I know it doesn't pay well, but again, it's not about the pay. It's about the passion, right?
That's shame on us. We should be paying our nannies a lot more.
I agree. And our school teachers.
And our school teachers, for sure. So final question, what is the best advice you could give your younger self just getting started?
Patience. It took me a long time because, again, I came into this industry in a roundabout way. I took a warehouse job during the summer before I was going to teach, and I never taught this. I ended up going from the warehouse to inside sales to outside sales to sales manager. But I never had patience along the way because I always wanted the next big sale or the next big customer. But as I learned over the years that it's funny, an old mentor of mine says, Ken, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Yeah.
So Be careful on how you come out of that gate. And I've learned that as I've gotten older to kind of be a little bit more patient. Things don't have to happen right away, and things will happen the right way for the right reasons. So yeah, it would be patience, if that makes sense.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Talking Industrial Automation. If you are interested in learning more about Ken or General Control Systems, you can find them on the Industrial Automation Exchange at www.csiexchange.com. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Ken, for joining me today.
Lisa, thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.
If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also really help the show by leaving a review and sharing with colleagues. We're all just slaves to the algorithm now, so I gotta ask. Thanks for listening to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. Thanks also to bensound.com and Wistia for the music bumpers. Until next time.